What happens when the perfect life is a perfect lie? When the man you love, the father of your unborn child, shatters your world with the ultimate betrayal. This is the story of Isabella Rossi, a woman living a fairy tale life with her millionaire husband, Damian Grayson. But behind the closed doors of their Manhattan penthouse, a web of deceit was being spun. While Isabella was preparing a nursery, Damian was celebrating a second secret marriage to his mistress. This isn't just a story of heartbreak. It's the story of a woman who transformed her pain into power, a mastermind of revenge who would stop at nothing to reclaim her life, leaving the man who wronged her with nothing but the ruins of his empire. This is the story of how a pregnant wife's righteous fury left her millionaire husband utterly bankrupt. The New York City skyline was a carpet of diamonds laid out exclusively for Isabella Rossi. From the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse on Central Park West, the city seemed to pulse with a rhythm that matched the excited thrum in her own heart. At 28, Isabella had what the world saw as everything youth beauty, and a husband whose name was synonymous with success, Damian Grayson. Their life was a carefully curated masterpiece. Days were filled with charity luncheons at the Plaza, private viewings at Sotheby's, and the soft rustle of custom-made couture. Evenings were a whirlwind of exclusive restaurant openings and galas where Damian, with his sharp Tom Ford suits and even sharper smile, was always the center of gravity. He was the golden boy of tech, a self-made millionaire whose company, Grayson Innovations, was the darling of Wall Street. And Isabella, his beautiful, adoring wife, was the perfect accessory. But their life was not an accessory to Isabella. It was real. The love she felt for Damian was the bedrock of her world. She remembered the man he was before the billions, the ambitious, brilliant visionary who had wooed her with street-cart hot dogs and dreams whispered under the stars in Central Park. He had promised her the world, and he had delivered. Now, nestled in the curve of their plush, oversized sofa, she ran a hand over the gentle swell of her stomach. 5 months pregnant. A son. They were going to name him Theodore, a strong, classic name. Theo. Damian had been ecstatic when she told him, lifting her into the air and laughing, his voice echoing with genuine joy in their cavernous living room. "A Grayson heir," he had boomed. "The world isn't big enough for what he and I will build." For the past few weeks, however, a tiny dissonant note had crept into their perfect symphony. It started subtly. Damian was working later, his Asia market calls becoming more frequent and stretching into the pre-dawn hours. He'd come home smelling of the city's stale night air, mingled with something else. A faint floral perfume she didn't recognize. It was cloying and sweet, a scent called La Perle Noire, she'd later learn. So unlike her own light, citrusy fragrance. When she'd asked, he had simply smiled that disarming smile. "You know how it is, darling. Endless meetings. Probably a new assistant at the office. Don't you worry your beautiful head." He'd kiss her forehead, his lips feeling cooler than usual. Then came the credit card statements. Tucked away in the monthly bill she usually paid without a glance was a charge for a 2-carat diamond tennis bracelet from a boutique on Madison Avenue, a boutique she had never set foot in. A gift for his mother, he'd explained smoothly, for her birthday. But Isabella had sent his mother a beautiful cashmere throw just last week for that very occasion. The lie was clumsy, arrogant. It was the first time Damian had ever been clumsy with her. Doubt, once planted, is a weed that grows in the dark. Isabella started to pay attention. She saw the way he angled his phone away from her, the quick, furtive taps as he cleared his notifications. There was a new password on his personal laptop, a device that had once been as open to her as his heart. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. The air was thick with the promise of a summer storm. Damian was supposedly in a bored retreat, upstate, unreachable until the next day. The house felt unnervingly quiet, amplifying the frantic beat of her own anxiety. She was arranging baby clothes in the newly painted nursery, a calming sky blue, when an email notification popped up on their shared family iPad, which was linked to their cloud storage. It was a photo stream update. Usually it was filled with pictures from their travels, family gatherings, or architectural designs Damian admired. But this was different. The sender was someone named Vicky. The subject line was a single heart emoji. Isabella's breath hitched. Her fingers, trembling, tapped open the notification. The screen filled with a photograph that shattered her world into a million glittering shards. It was Damian. He was on a white sand beach, the turquoise water behind him impossibly blue. He was wearing a white linen shirt, unbuttoned to show his tanned chest. His arm was wrapped tightly around a woman with platinum blonde hair, a predatory smile, and eyes that seemed to challenge the world. She was wearing a simple, elegant white dress that looked suspiciously like a wedding gown. On her left hand, catching the brilliant Caribbean sun, was a diamond ring so large it was almost vulgar. And on her wrist, unmistakably, was the 2-carat diamond tennis bracelet. But it was Damian's expression that dealt the fatal blow. It was a look of unguarded, triumphant joy, a look she hadn't seen on his face directed at her in a very long time. Below the photo was a caption, Mr. and Mrs. Grayson. Forever starts now. Cayman Islands. Secretly married, my king, Mr. and Mrs. Grayson. The words swam before her eyes. Secretly married. The iPad slipped from her numb fingers and clattered onto the polished hardwood floor. The sound echoed in the silent penthouse like a gunshot. Isabella sank to the floor, her back against the crib meant for their son, and the first wave of a pain so profound she thought it might physically split her in two washed over her. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a complete erasure. Her life, her marriage, her future, the very identity of the child growing inside her, it was all a lie. A meticulously crafted, gilded cage. And the door had just been slammed shut with her on the inside. The storm outside broke. Rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the tempest that had just been unleashed within her soul. In that moment, surrounded by the innocent blue of her son's nursery, the soft, heartbroken woman, named Isabella Rossi, died. And from her ashes, something new, something cold and hard and diamond-sharp began to form. Revenge. For 48 hours, Isabella functioned on autopilot. She moved through the vast, silent penthouse like a ghost, the vibrant city outside a mocking blur. She ate not because she was hungry, but for the baby. She slept in one of the guest rooms, the king-sized bed she had shared with Damian, feeling like a tomb. She didn't cry. The shock had frozen her tears, crystallizing her grief into a single razor-sharp point of focus. When Damian returned, he was the picture of the doting husband, striding in with a bouquet of her favorite white peonies and a story of a successful if grueling retreat. "Isabella, darling, I missed you," he said, moving to kiss her. She turned her head, and his lips met her cheek. It felt like being touched by a snake. "You smell of salt and sun," she said, her voice unnervingly calm. Not the Catskills. A flicker of panic in his eyes, so quick she would have missed it before. But now she saw everything. We had a session by the lake, he lied, already spinning the narrative. The air was wonderful. She held his gaze, letting the silence stretch. In that moment, she made a conscious decision. She would not scream. She would not break down. She would not give him the satisfaction of her pain. She would play his game, but she would write the ending. I'm glad you're home, she said, her voice a perfect imitation of the loving wife he expected. I've been worried. That night, as he slept soundly beside her, the sheer audacity of it left her breathless. She slipped out of bed. In her study, she made the most important call of her life. Chloe, she whispered into the phone, her voice finally cracking. I need you. Chloe Chang was more than Isabella's best friend. She was a partner at one of New York's most formidable litigation firms. She was sharp, relentless, and possessed a loyalty as fierce as a tigress. She arrived at the penthouse within the hour, her usual sharp business attire replaced by jeans and a determined expression. Isabella laid it all out. The late nights, the perfume, the bracelet, and finally the photograph. She pulled it up on the iPad, her hand steady now. Chloe stared at the image, her expression hardening from concern to pure, unadulterated fury. She scrolled through the other photos in the album, Damian and this Vicky clinking champagne glasses, kissing on a yacht, their hands intertwined. There were dozens of them. A whole secret life documented and celebrated. The Caymans, Chloe murmured, her legal mind already whirring. A favorite spot for discreet arrangements. It's a British overseas territory. Their marriage laws are different, but a legal ceremony that can be recognized here if filed correctly. She looked up at Isabella, her eyes dark. We have to assume it's a legal marriage, which makes him a bigamist. The word hung in the air, ugly and criminal. What do I do? Isabella asked the question a plea. Chloe took her friend's hands. The old adage is don't get all, get even. But that's not enough. We aren't getting even. We are going to systematically dismantle him. We will take his company, his reputation, and every last cent he has. We will leave him so bankrupt that the only thing he'll own is his name. And by the time we're done, that will be worthless too. You are pregnant with the Grayson heir. That gives you leverage he can't even begin to comprehend. A fire ignited in Isabella's chest, burning away the last vestiges of the heartbroken victim. Chloe was right. This wasn't just about a cheating husband. It was about the future of her child. It was about justice. Okay, Isabella said, her voice firm. What's the first step? The first step is you, Chloe replied, her tone all business. You are now the performance of your life. You are the loving, slightly tired, completely unsuspecting, pregnant wife. You will not change a single thing about your routine. He cannot know that you know. We need time for him to gather our arsenal. And for that, we need a ghost. The ghost was Jack Donovan, a private investigator Chloe had used on a few contentious corporate espionage cases. He was a former NYPD detective, old-school discreet, and possessed a network of informants that ran through every stratum of the city. They met him in a nondescript coffee shop in Hell's Kitchen. Donovan was a man in his late 50s with tired eyes that missed nothing. He listened intently as Chloe, protecting Isabella's identity for the moment, laid out the preliminary facts: a high net worth husband, a suspected affair, and a possible bigamous marriage. Isabella, sitting silently, pushed a folder across the table. Inside was everything she had. Damian's full name, his company. Details the name Victoria Vance from the photo stream, and a high-resolution printout of the picture from the Caymans. Donovan picked up the photo. He studied the woman Victoria. A face like that is either born into money or is very, very good at acquiring it, he grunted. I'll start with her. The man is the target, but the woman is the key. She'll have a history. They always do. He then looked at Isabella, a flicker of something like sympathy in his professional gaze. This won't be pleasant. Are you prepared for what I might find? I'm prepared for anything, Isabella stated, her voice devoid of emotion. Find it all. Jack Donovan was worth every penny. Within a week, the first report landed in Chloe's encrypted inbox. Victoria Vance was 29, a former model and current lifestyle influencer with a voracious appetite for the high life and a string of wealthy benefactors in her past. Donovan's sources in the Caymans confirmed it. Damian Grayson and Victoria Vance had been legally married in a private ceremony on Grand Cayman 3 months ago. They had filed the paperwork immediately. Damian was legally and criminally a bigamist, but Donovan dug deeper. Victoria Vance was an invention. Her real name was Vanessa Roach from a small town in Nevada. She had a juvenile record for petty fraud and had changed her name as soon as she turned 18, setting her sights on bigger game. She wasn't just a mistress, she was a professional predator. Donovan's report included a detailed history of her movements, her connections, and her calculated climb up the social ladder. While Donovan was unearthing Vanessa Roach's sordid past, Isabella played her part to perfection. She feigned morning sickness, asked Damian about his day, and even massaged his shoulders when he complained about the stress of work. Every touch was poison, every loving word a lie. It was a torturous existence, but with each passing day, her resolve hardened. She was a soldier behind enemy lines, gathering intelligence, waiting for the signal to strike. The signal came from an unexpected quarter. Chloe, leveraging her firm's vast resources, had started a deep dive into Grayson Innovations. On the surface, it was a fortress, a tech giant with soaring profits, and a revolutionary new AI platform that was its crown jewel. It's too perfect, Chloe said during one of their late-night strategy sessions in her office. Companies that grow this fast, this cleanly, they're either run by a once-in-a-generation genius or they're cutting corners. We need someone on the inside. Finding that person seemed impossible. Damian ran his company with an iron fist, demanding absolute loyalty. But Isabella remembered someone. Marcus Thorne, the chief financial officer, a quiet, meticulous man with a wife and 2 young daughters. A few years ago, his youngest had a rare medical condition, and Isabella had personally connected him with a top specialist, using her family's contacts to get him an immediate appointment. Marcus had been eternally grateful. He owed her. It was a long shot, a dangerous one. If he tipped off Damian, their entire plan would implode. But looking at the cold, hard proof of Damian's bigamy on the table, Isabella knew they needed more. A divorce based on infidelity and bigamy would be messy and painful. But Damian's wealth was so vast, he could absorb the financial hit. To truly bankrupt him, they needed to strike at the source of his power, his company. With Chloe's guidance, Isabella composed a carefully worded email to Marcus's private address, mentioning a sensitive personal matter. She hoped he could advise her on appealing to his sense of decency and their past connection. 2 days later, an answer came. I can meet. My office. Saturday, 10 a.m. Come alone. The trap was being set. The bait was Isabella's vulnerability. But the hunter was no longer Damian. It was the woman whose life he had tried to destroy. The lobby of Grayson Innovations was designed to intimidate. A cavernous 3-story atrium of black marble and brushed steel, dominated by a holographic display of the company's logo rotating in mid-air. It was a temple built to the ego of one man, Damian Grayson. As Isabella walked across the polished floor, her heels clicking with a confidence she didn't feel, the security guard at the front desk looked up in surprise. "Mrs. Grayson, we weren't expecting you." "I have a meeting with Marcus Thorne," she said, her voice cool and steady. "He's expecting me." A quick call confirmed her appointment, and she was ushered into the elevator, the silence of the weekend morning adding to the tension. She felt a pang of nausea, but it had nothing to do with her pregnancy. She was walking into the heart of the enemy's fortress, armed with nothing but a desperate hope and a past favor. Marcus Thorne's office was a world away from the lobby's cold grandeur. It was cluttered human. Photos of his daughters were pinned to a corkboard, their smiling faces a stark contrast to the nervous, haunted look on Marcus's own. He was a man drowning in numbers, and it showed. "Isabella," he said, avoiding her eyes as he closed the door. "I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know what I'm sorry for, but given you're here like this, it can't be good." "Marcus," she began, deciding directness was the only path. "I know about Damian's other marriage." The color drained from his face. He sank into his chair, looking 10 years older. "I see," he whispered. "I had my suspicions. The travel expenses to the Caymans that were to be deeply buried. The wire transfers to a Victoria Vance. I'm his CFO, not his priest. I didn't ask. I'm not here to blame you, Marcus. I'm here because you're a good man, and I believe you know what's right. I am pregnant with Damian's son. This other woman, his new wife, is a fraud with a criminal past. But he is so blinded by his own arrogance he can't see it. I am going to divorce him. But a standard divorce won't protect my son's future. Damian will hide his assets, he will fight, and he will win. Unless I have leverage. Leverage. She paused, letting her words sink in. You see things, Marcus, in the numbers. The discrepancies that a man like Damian thinks no one is smart enough to find. I know you're loyal to the company, but is your loyalty to him or to the truth? Marcus stared at the photo of his 2 girls. He ran a hand over his tired face. Loyalty, he said bitterly. He talks about loyalty, but he'd throw any of us under the bus to save himself. You know that, Ash, don't you? He finally met her gaze, and she saw a flicker of rebellion. It's worse than you think. It's not just his personal life that's a lie. The whole company is. Isabella leaned forward, her heart pounding. This was it. Grayson Innovations' entire valuation, Marcus explained, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, is built on our flagship product, the Helios AI learning algorithm. It's what took us from a mid-level tech firm to a global giant in 2 years. It's supposedly Damian's brilliant proprietary creation. Supposedly, Isabella prompted. He didn't create it. Marcus said the words tumbling out as if a dam had broken. He stole it. 5 years ago, we acquired a small, struggling startup founded by a young genius named Ben Carter. Ben had developed the foundational code for Helios. It was revolutionary. Damian bought the company for pennies, buried Ben in a low-level coding department with an ironclad NDA, and then spent the next year reverse engineering and rebranding Ben's work as his own. Ben Carter died 2 years ago. A car accident. It was convenient. Isabella felt a chill run down her spine. This was darker than she could have ever imagined. But theft is hard to prove, she said. That's the first part. Marcus continued, opening a locked drawer in his desk and pulling out a slim encrypted hard drive. The second part is fraud. To cover the massive R&D costs and inflate our growth to attract investors for the IPO, Damian started cooking the books. He created shell corporations, falsified revenue streams, and hid liabilities in a way that is brilliantly complex. It's a house of cards, a multi-billion-dollar house of cards. If one specific revenue report were to be investigated by the SEC, the whole thing would collapse. He looked at the hard drive in his hand. I started documenting it all 6 months ago. The inconsistencies, the offshore accounts, the original source code from Ben Carter's files that I managed to recover from an old server before it was wiped. I did it to protect myself. If he ever went down, I didn't want to be the CFO holding the bag. He pushed the hard drive across the desk toward Isabella. I can't be the one to use this. I have a family. But he destroyed Ben Carter. And he's destroying you. If this information were to be anonymously delivered to, say, a very aggressive reporter at the Wall Street Journal and the enforcement division of the SEC, his empire would cease to exist within a month. Isabella stared at the small piece of plastic and metal. It was the atomic bomb they had been looking for. It held the power to not just bankrupt Damian, but to potentially send him to prison. "Why, Marcus?" she asked softly. "Why risk everything for me?" "Because you showed my family kindness when you had no reason to," he said simply. "And because my daughters deserve to know their father stood for something at least once." Isabella took the drive. It felt heavy with the weight of futures, Damian's, hers, her son's, and Marcus's. "He will never know it came from you," she promised. "I swear it." Walking out of the Grayson Innovations building, Isabella no longer felt like a victim. She felt like a general with a war plan. She had the proof of bigamy from Jack Donovan. She had the legal strategy from Chloe. And now, thanks to Marcus Thorne, she had the weapon that would bring the entire kingdom crashing down. The plan was refined in Chloe's war room of an office. They would orchestrate a 3-pronged attack. Phase 1. The social assassination. They needed to tarnish Damian's carefully crafted public image. Isabella would accidentally leak a rumor to a well-known society gossip columnist, someone she knew from the charity circuit. Not the full story, but just enough to light the fuse a whisper about Damian being incredibly close to a stunning new influencer, Victoria Vance. It would create a crack in his armor of respectability. Phase 2. The legal ambush. Once the rumors started to swirl, Chloe would file for divorce. The petition would be a masterpiece of legal devastation, citing irreconcilable differences. But the real bombshells would be saved for discovery. They would subpoena travel records, financial statements, and deposition requests for both Damian and a Ms. Victoria Vance, officially putting her on the legal chessboard. Phase 3. The financial apocalypse. This was the kill shot. After the divorce filing sent Damian and his legal team into a frenzy, Chloe would use a secure anonymous channel to deliver Marcus's hard drive to 2 places simultaneously, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist known for taking down corporate giants and the SEC's whistleblower office. The timing had to be perfect, a cascading series of explosions designed to leave him no room to maneuver, no time to hide his assets. No chance to spin the story. Isabella went home, the hard drive tucked securely in her purse. She found Damian in their home gym, working out his aggression on a punching bag, a sheen of sweat on his brow. "Tough day?" she asked, her voice sweet as honey. "You have no idea," he grunted, not looking at her. "Just pressure. Always pressure." "Well," she said, placing a gentle hand on his back. "Let me know if there's anything I can do to help." He just nodded, oblivious. He thought the bag in front of him was his enemy. He had no idea the real threat was standing right behind him, ready to burn his world to the ground. The performance was almost over. The final act was about to begin. The first domino fell with the delicate clink of a champagne flute. At a benefit for the New York Public Library, Isabella found her target, Beatrice Fairfax, a society columnist for Manhattan Pulse, whose pen could build a reputation or shatter it with a single, well-placed sentence. Beatrice, a woman in her 60s, with surgically sharp eyes, glided over to Isabella. "Isabella, my dear, you're glowing. Pregnancy suits you." "Thank you, Beatrice." Isabella smiled, a perfect picture of maternal bliss. "Though Damian has been working so hard, I barely see him. His new project is all-consuming." Beatrice's interest was piqued. "Oh, another billion-dollar idea." "Something like that," Isabella said, leaning in conspiratorially, her voice a low murmur. "It's not just a project, it's a person. A new protégé. An influencer, I believe. Victoria Vance. He says she has a revolutionary vision for the brand. He's been flying her all over, even to the Caymans, for inspiration. He's completely captivated by her." She delivered the lines with a masterful blend of wifely pride and a hint of weary resignation. She didn't mention an affair or a marriage. She simply planted a name, Victoria Vance, and linked it to Damian and a romantic, exclusive location. She let Beatrice's famously cynical mind do the rest. 2 days later, Beatrice Fairfax's column opened with a juicy blind item. Which tech titan with a lovely wife expecting their first child has become so captivated by his stunning new influencer protégé that he's jetting her off to private island meetings? Insiders say his focus has shifted entirely to his new VV, and his wife may be the last to know. The whispers started immediately. In the exclusive circles Damian and Isabella traveled, the item was as good as a headline in the New York Times. Damian was furious, but he couldn't pinpoint the source. He stormed around the penthouse, ranting about corporate enemies and jealous rivals. He assured Isabella it was all nonsense, a fabrication by people who wanted to see him fail. "Of course, darling," she said, patting his arm. "I trust you." While he was distracted trying to plug the leak in his social standing, the second domino fell. A courier delivered a thick envelope to Damian's office. Inside were the divorce papers. Chloe had crafted a document that was both elegantly simple and brutally effective. It cited irreconcilable differences. But the attached financial disclosures and discovery requests were a declaration of war. They demanded a complete accounting of every asset, every offshore holding, every wire transfer for the last 5 years. And on page 7 was the request to depose Miss Victoria Vance regarding her personal and financial relationship with Mr. Grayson. The filing hit Damian like a physical blow. He came home that evening, his face pale, the papers clutched in his hand. The charming mask was gone, replaced by a look of pure reptilian fury. "What is this?" he hissed, throwing the papers onto the marble coffee table. "After all I've given you, you do this while you're carrying my son." Isabella stood her ground. her feigned fragility evaporating. "What have you given me, Damian?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "A life built on lies? Or did you think I wouldn't find out about your wife?" The word hung in the air between them. "Wife." He recoiled, as if struck. "What are you talking about? You're my wife." "Am I?" Isabella shot back, her voice rising with righteous anger. "Or is that the title you gave to Victoria Vance, or should I say, Vanessa Roach in the Cayman Islands 3 months ago?" Damian's face went from white to grey. He was speechless. For the first time in his life, the master manipulator had no words, no angle, no escape route. He had underestimated her completely. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," he finally snarled, falling back on threats. "I will leave you with nothing. I will fight you for custody. You will regret this for the rest of your miserable life." "No, Damian," Isabella said, walking past him towards the door, her overnight bag already packed. "You're the one who is about to have regrets." She left him standing alone in the silent penthouse, the divorce papers scattered at his feet. She checked into a suite at the Carlisle, with private security arranged by Chloe. The war had officially begun. Damian's response was swift and brutal. His lawyers, a pack of legal sharks, filed a motion to seal the divorce proceedings and countersued, accusing Isabella of emotional distress and erratic behavior due to her pregnancy. He was trying to paint her as an unstable gold digger. It was exactly what Chloe had predicted, and it was the perfect diversion. While Damian's legal team was focused on the divorce, Chloe executed Phase 3. Using a multi-layered VPN and an anonymous email service, she transmitted 2 identical packages. The first went to Carter Evans, a tenacious investigative reporter at the Wall Street Journal, with a reputation for dismantling corporate corruption. The second went directly to the SEC's Division of Enforcement. The packages contained the entire contents of Marcus Thorne's hard drive, the stolen source code, the meticulous records of financial fraud, the shell corporations, everything. The email's subject line was simple: the truth behind Grayson Innovations. For a week, there was an unnerving silence. Damian, emboldened by Isabella's departure, flaunted his relationship with Victoria, moving her into the penthouse. The tabloids had a field day. It was a calculated move to humiliate Isabella, to show the world that he was unbothered, powerful, and in control. He thought the battle was being fought on the pages of the gossip columns and in the family court. He had no idea that a financial nuclear bomb was ticking under his feet. The bomb detonated on a Wednesday morning. The headline on the front page of the Wall Street Journal was "Stark Grayson Innovations Genius, or Grand Larceny Sources. Allege stolen tech, massive fraud at heart of tech giant." Carter Evans's article was a masterpiece of destruction. It laid out the entire scheme, citing internal documents and an unimpeachable source. It told the story of Ben Carter, the tragic genius whose work was stolen. It detailed the shell corporations and the falsified revenue that had propped up the company's stock for years. Simultaneously, the SEC issued a press release. They were halting trading of Grayson Innovations, stock ticker BLKW, and launching a full formal investigation into the company and its CEO, Damian Grayson, for securities fraud. The result was instantaneous and cataclysmic. When trading was briefly reopened before the halt, BLKW stock plummeted by 92% in 7 minutes. Billions of dollars in market value vanished into thin air. Damian's personal net worth, which was almost entirely tied up in company stock, evaporated. In his penthouse, surrounded by the black marble and steel he so loved, Damian Grayson watched his life's work turn to dust on a cable news ticker. His phone rang incessantly, furious investors, his board of directors, his lawyers. He was trapped, blindsided, and utterly ruined. And in her suite at the Carlisle, Isabella watched the same news report. She placed a hand on her belly, where her son gave a gentle kick, as if he knew. There was no joy on her face, no triumph, just the quiet, grim satisfaction of a battle won. The cascade she had started had become an avalanche, and it was thundering down the mountain, ready to bury Damian Grayson for good. The fallout from the Wall Street Journal expose and the SEC investigation was a bloodbath. Damian's board of directors, a group of powerful men who valued their own reputations above all else, convened an emergency meeting and summarily fired him from the company he had founded. His name was stripped from the building. His corporate credit cards were cancelled. The empire was cutting off its head to save the body, but it was too late. The company was toxic, a financial pariah. Bankruptcy was inevitable. Damian was in a free fall, but his arrogance died hard. He holed up in the penthouse, which was now less a palace and more a prison, with the one person he believed was his ally, Victoria. He was convinced this was all Isabella's doing, a scorned wife's petty revenge. He still didn't grasp the totality of his ruin. He thought he could salvage something, use his offshore accounts to start again. But Isabella and Chloe had anticipated this. Chloe's second legal filing was a masterstroke. Citing the criminal investigation and the clear evidence of bigamy, she filed an emergency motion to freeze all of Damian's known assets, both domestic and international, pending the outcome of the divorce. The argument was simple and powerful: a man who would commit fraud on a global scale against his investors and fraud on a personal scale by committing bigamy could not be trusted not to hide marital assets. A judge, seeing the mountain of evidence, agreed. The freeze order came down like a guillotine. When Damian tried to wire money from his account in the Bahamas to a new one under a different name, the transaction was denied. He was locked out. The king was dethroned, and now he couldn't even access the gold in his treasury. It was in this pressure cooker of panic and impotence that his alliance with Victoria finally shattered. Victoria, or Vanessa Roach, was a survivor. She had attached herself to Damian for the lifestyle and the security his billions represented. With those billions gone, and his name becoming a synonym for disgrace, he was no longer an asset. He was a liability. "You have to get me out of here," she demanded, her voice stripped of its usual seductive purr, replaced by a shrill panic. She was pacing the living room, her designer luggage already packed. "Give me the money you promised me, and I'm gone. I can't be associated with this." "The money's temporarily inaccessible," Damian mumbled, staring at his useless phone. "It's a technicality. My lawyers will sort it out." Victoria stopped pacing and let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "Lawyers?" "Damian, you're finished. Did you not read the article? They're talking about prison?" "I did not sign up for this. I'm not going to be some jailhouse wife." "You are my wife," he roared, lashing out. "You're Mrs. Grayson. You're in this with me." "No, I'm not," she screamed back, her carefully constructed facade of sophistication crumbling to reveal the desperate hustler beneath. "Our deal was for a life of luxury, not a life on the run. You told me you were divorcing her. You told me you had it all under control. I did. But she's a psycho. She's trying to ruin me." "No, you ruined you," Victoria retorted, her eyes blazing with fury. "And you lied to me. You told me she was just some fragile little doll you could discard. You never told me she had a spine of steel." She was close to his face now, her voice dropping to a venomous hiss. "Now you give me what I'm owed. I need at least $5 million to disappear and start over. I can't access it. he yelled, grabbing her arms. "Don't you understand? It's frozen!" It was then that Victoria played her final desperate card. She wrenched her arms free, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "Fine. Then I guess it's a good thing I have my own insurance policy." She patted her perfectly flat stomach. "I didn't want to have to tell you like this, but congratulations, Daddy. I'm pregnant too." For a moment, Damian froze, the news hitting him like another body blow. Another heir. A child with Victoria. But as he looked at her, at the cold, calculating glint in her eyes, a lifetime of reading people, of spotting tells and lies kicked in. He saw it. The bluff. It was the same look a rival CEO had before a failed, hostile takeover. It was pure, unadulterated deception. And in that moment of clarity, he saw the whole sordid picture. He had been played. By everyone. "You're lying," he whispered. Victoria's smile faltered. "What? You're not pregnant?" he said, his voice gaining strength. "You're lying. It's just another angle, another way to get money out of me. Just like Vanessa Roach from Nevada would do." The use of her real name was like a slap in the face. Her eyes widened in genuine shock and fear. Jack Donovan's file had been thorough. Chloe had made sure to leak that specific detail to Damian's legal team as part of the discovery process, a little psychological grenade to roll into his bunker. "How?" she stammered. "It doesn't matter," Damian said, a hollow laugh escaping his lips. He finally understood the depth of the conspiracy against him. "Get out of my house!" "Not without my money!" she shrieked. The final ugly confrontation was interrupted by a loud, authoritative knock on the door. Not the polite rap of a concierge, but the firm, unyielding knock of the law. Damian opened the door to find 2 FBI agents in dark suits, their faces grim. Behind them stood Jack Donovan, who gave Damian a small, tight nod. He had been tracking Victoria and knew she was the final unstable element. Her panicked call to a former associate, caught on a wiretap, had tipped them off that she was a flight risk. "Damian Grayson," the lead agent said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "You're under arrest for securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy." As they put him in handcuffs, the world he had built, the penthouse, the name, the power, seemed to shrink around him. He glanced back and saw Victoria, her face a mask of terror, being spoken to by another agent. She wasn't an ally or a wife. She was just another piece of evidence against him. His final, most personal betrayal. The elevator ride down felt like a descent into hell. As he was led out of the building's grand entrance, a frenzy of reporters and photographers swarmed him, their cameras flashing like lightning in a storm. Across the street, watching from the tinted window of a black town car, sat Isabella. She didn't feel triumph. She didn't feel joy. She felt a profound, aching sense of closure. She watched the man she had once loved, the man who had been the center of her universe, reduced to a common criminal, his face a mixture of shock and utter defeat. He was no longer the king of the city, just another man swallowed by his own hubris. She gave a quiet instruction to her driver. As the car pulled away from the curb, she didn't look back. She was driving toward the future, toward the birth of her son, toward a life that was finally, truly her own. The king had fallen. His reign was over. 6 months later, the brutal New York winter had finally relinquished its grip, yielding to a tentative, hopeful spring. In the quiet, tree-lined streets of Park Slope, Brooklyn, the air was sweet with the scent of damp earth and blossoming cherry trees. It was a world away from the rarefied, hermetically sealed atmosphere of Central Park West. And for Isabella Rossi, it was the first real breath of fresh air she'd taken in years. The city, in its relentless cycle of decay and rebirth, was offering a clean slate, and she was ready to accept it. Her own regeneration had arrived 3 months prior, on a crisp January morning, in the form of a 7-pound miracle named Leo. The moment the doctors placed him in her arms, a profound and seismic shift occurred within her, holding his tiny, warm body against hers. Listening to his first soft cries, she felt the last vestiges of her cold, calculated anger melt away, replaced by a love so fierce and absolute it reoriented her entire universe. His small, perfect face with a dusting of dark hair, so like her own, was not a trophy from a war won, but the very reason the war had been necessary. In his innocent eyes, she saw not a reflection of Damian's betrayal, but the untarnished promise of the future. The revenge had been a means to an end, a scorched earth campaign to clear the ground. Leo was the foundation for everything that would be built upon it. The legal and financial maelstrom had concluded with the grim finality of a gavel strike. Damian Grayson's trial was a media spectacle. Faced with Marcus Thorne's irrefutable evidence, corroborated by a dozen other executives eager to save themselves, Damian's legal team saw the futility of a fight. He accepted a plea deal. The sentencing was brutal. 15 years in a federal penitentiary for securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The charge of bigamy while carrying a lesser sentence was the detail that captured the public imagination, the lurid cherry on top of his sundae of disgrace. It sealed his legacy not as a fallen genius, but as a common cheat and a fool. In the final courtroom images, his custom-tailored suit hung on him like a costume, his face gaunt and haunted the mask of the invincible titan, finally, irrevocably shattered. He was no longer Damian Grayson. He was inmate number 73408-054. Victoria Vance, true to her predatory instincts, had played her final card perfectly. She provided the prosecution with a detailed, if self-serving, testimony in exchange for full immunity. She painted herself as another victim of Damian's web of lies, a portrayal the prosecutors were happy to use. The day after the sentencing, she was gone. She vanished from New York as quickly as she had appeared, a ghost leaving behind nothing but a faint trail of expensive perfume and bad press, already en route to her next identity, her next target. Grayson Innovations. The hollowed-out carcass of Damian's ambition was systematically dismantled by bankruptcy courts. Its assets were sold for pennies on the dollar. To competitors, its patents absorbed its steel and glass headquarters, now bearing another company's name. After the legions of creditors, defrauded investors and government agencies had taken their pounds of flesh, there was little left. That remainder, through Chloe's relentless legal maneuvering, was awarded to Isabella in the divorce settlement. It was not the vast fortune she once lived amidst, but it was a substantial sum. It was hers, and it was clean. The first act of her new life was to sell the penthouse. She never stepped foot in it again, authorizing Chloe to handle the entire transaction. The proceeds from the sale, combined with her settlement, were more than enough. She purchased a magnificent, light-filled brownstone in Brooklyn. It had high ceilings, worn wooden floors that creaked with character, and a small walled garden out back, patiently waiting for the laughter of a child. Mornings were no longer silent affairs punctuated by the distant hum of traffic. Now they were filled with the smell of brewing coffee, the cheerful gurgle of Leo in his bassinet, and the sight of sunlight dappling through the leaves of the old oak tree outside her window. It was a home alive to antas, warm, not a sterile gallery for a life that was never real. But peace and motherhood were not enough. The woman who had stared into the abyss and orchestrated the downfall of a corporate Goliath could not simply retreat into domesticity. The fire that had been forged in her was not extinguished. It had been refined. Working late nights at her new dining room table with Chloe, surrounded by legal pads and thermoses of coffee, an idea took shape. 2 months later, she launched the Rossi Foundation for Women's Justice. It was a non-profit organization with a clear, fierce mission to provide elite legal and financial resources to women ensnared in complex, fraudulent, or abusive marriages with powerful partners. She understood the unique terror of being gaslit by a man who controls your entire world, and she was determined to give other women the weapons she had to build for herself. Her new office, located on the brownstone's garden level, was the antithesis of Damian's former command center. It was filled with warm woods, comfortable chairs, and art painted by local artists. On her desk, a silver frame held a photo of a smiling, chubby-cheeked Leo. One afternoon, while reviewing the case file of their first beneficiary, a young woman being systematically bankrupted by her politically connected husband. Her phone buzzed with a text. It was from a number she didn't recognize, but the message was unmistakable. Heard about the foundation. Ben Carter would be proud. I know I am. MT. A slow, genuine smile spread across Isabella's face. Marcus Thorne. He had found his peace on the West Coast, but he was still watching, still rooting for the side of justice. She looked from the message to the picture of her son. The ghosts of the past. Damian's arrogant smirk. Victoria's cruel smile no longer had the power to haunt her. They were footnotes in a story that was now entirely her own. She hadn't just gotten revenge. She had repurposed her pain into power, transforming the ruins of her old life into a sanctuary for others. Damian had built an empire of lies on a foundation of sand. Isabella, in the quiet heart of Brooklyn, was building a legacy of strength on the bedrock of truth. And in the profound peace of her new reality, she knew she was finally immeasurably rich. And so Isabella's story comes to a close. From the heights of Manhattan luxury to the depths of the ultimate betrayal, she navigated a storm that would have broken most. But she didn't just survive. She triumphed. She proved that the most powerful currency isn't money or status, but intelligence, courage, and an unbreakable will. Damian Grayson lost his fortune and his freedom, a prisoner of his own greed and deceit. Isabella, in contrast, found a new kind of wealth in her son, in her purpose, and in her own incredible strength. Her revenge wasn't just about bankruptcy. It was about rebirth. If Isabella's incredible journey of resilience and justice resonated with you, please hit that like button to show your support. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own power to overcome. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell. You won't want to miss our next story of real-life drama, intrigue, and ultimate triumph. What did you think of Isabella's meticulously planned revenge? Was it justified? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one.